Hey, kitty. Come here, cat. Come on, Gypsy. Come here, Gypsy. Come on, Gypsy. Come on, cat. Well, getting it down. What's wrong with these animals, man? Damn animals. I need that black again. Shit. Fuck.
technology away from the spirituality, and then it becomes a hard science. And somewhere in that path, man invented religion. Religion was primarily for the three basic reasons. First of all, respect, and of course, the other was control, and the third one was greed. And so it worked against spirituality. The indigenous community had technology that was performed through the conscious methodology. For example, there was remote viewing.
I'm John Vivanco, and I've been in remote viewing for over 20 years. I was working in a civilian think tank. We were civilian operations, yet we were utilized by some of those in government. And usually the stuff in government was bizarre. It was never normal type stuff. There's one case that we've really dug into. That's the case of JC. Right? He claims that he came across a cave that went, 11 or 18 miles underground. And he came across what he called the village, eventually called the village. These cutout rooms, he found giant mummies that were up to 12 feet tall. We decided to take this case, see if we can find out first if it's real.
Okay, get down.
Right. So we also go and we identify the locations where we can find them, the whole 9 yards. But as far as the giants are concerned, these are from an ancient
Get down.
These beings have been on Earth for a very long time. When we looked at where they originally came from, it was a seeding on one side, like humans, for instance, and then alien intervention, where they had genetically manipulated this species to be the way they are. And what happened with them was that there was a major cataclysm. This is probably around the time of the flood, so they were still around. And a major cataclysm occurred, especially up in the flooding, up in the Pacific Northwest, that wiped them out. And this cave system that these guys went to, these giants went to, was them trying to escape and get out of the way of this cataclysm. Now you had humans who survived this cataclysm.
Whenever the Earth would have a catastrophic episode, these genetic farmer races would take the civilizations they were experimenting on underground to protect their experiment.
You've got petroglyphs up in the Lava Beds National Monument in Northern California, who they're describing that. They're describing something that happened with the sun that destroyed a huge part of the Earth. And so these giants were wiped out in part by that, and in part by, Native Americans. I mean, they hunted them down, and they killed them. And I don't know how intelligent the giants were. We don't get them as being extremely intelligent. We get Native Americans, Native Indians, humans, this new version of humans as being extremely intelligent compared to them and able to just eradicate it, because these giants would end up eating them. They would capture them and eat them. We looked at the reality of his mind, and then we also looked at what he was doing at the moment he claims that he found it. And those two things lined up. So we're getting giant mummies. We're getting weaponry. We're getting strange symbols on copper plates. Everything that he claimed that he found, we saw in our remote viewing data.
This copper scrolls are 20,000 years old. They've been dated. It took me 42 years to decipher 15%, maybe less than that. And why are they hard to decipher? Because they're in a different language. They're in a vibrational language. If you read it with a wet finger, and you're taught that chant, you chant it over and over and over until that almost like Braille. When you go over it, you feel it's like a tingle on your fingers. You keep translating that in picture form, and it's not even you learn outside of me. So when I run my hand over, there's a probably 4,000, 5,000 flips. I would call them the triangles, and they have different symbolism on it. So you text the symbolism, brings you into alignment. And the Copper Scrolls gives us instructions on technology, history, timelines, inverted timelines, different math to calculate those timelines. They explain about different physics, about 140 different ways of doing that. Copper Scrolls, we don't think they're from here. Copper Scrolls have been mentioned in the Bible through a lot of ancient texts. The Mormons have part of the Copper Scrolls, but the government has some of it. And there's other organizations that have parts of it. And there's still some of the Copper Scrolls that are still buried that we know where they are. The Copper Scrolls gives us very specific instructions how to make a spiritual machine so you can actually hear spirit. And you can help the spirit. And the spirit will help back. No machinery, nothing else. No cell phones, no prayers, no dancing, no channeling. It's what's happening. That's what we're doing.
Some of our native indigenous civilizations that mysteriously disappeared, such as the Olmec, were actually extraterrestrial civilizations.
So over eons of time, when in other solar systems they went through similar catastrophic cycles, these genetic farmer races had brought them as refugees to our planet, and they would live on our planet for up to thousands of years while their system repaired. And then afterwards, they were removed and returned here in the solar system. So it turns out the Earth is a cosmic refugee.
So the things that we see in the Bible as apparently metaphorical are actually real stories. They are real pieces of information. And this, I believe, includes the idea of Jesus arriving. So the group that Jesus came to oppose actually hijacked his message, and as of 325 AD, created the New Testament with a very selectively manicured Jesus' message to remove the teachings that they thought were anathema to their agenda. So apparently, Jesus spoke to one of the original apostles, Apostle Peter, about reincarnation. This apostle then said that reincarnation was the great secret teaching of Jesus. By removing reincarnation from Christianity, the Roman elite were able to create an airtight Trinitarian doctrine. And the Trinity is God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, and there's nothing else. The Holy Spirit becomes this sort of mystical thing that is not gendered feminine. You have the Father, which is masculine, the Son, which is masculine, and the Holy Spirit, which does not have a gender. Therefore, the role of the feminine is removed from the Trinity. And this is an important point. The suppression of the feminine by the patriarchy to hold down the feminine aspect of human spirituality and the feminine perspective that would include itself in governance, in law, in education, in all different aspects of society.
One of the key parts of awakening is, really understanding, feminine energy. I think really what's being rebalanced or coming to light for people is the end of nature and the understanding of things like sacred union. But when women are holding sort of this historic resentment towards men, it's still not reaching a place that we need to reach, I think, with each other to have unity consciousness, because it has nothing to do with men. It has nothing to do with women. It has to do with the program. It has to do with something that impacts both sexes. And if you think about it, men have gotten their limbs blown off in war. Women have been exiled, and there's been a lack of justice or lack of empowerment. So this is how we heal our DNA. So junk DNA is actually scrambled fire codes that hold masculine and feminine energies in balance. That's how it upgrades and enhances the earth grids too. So the rebalancing, has to do with recognizing that the junk is actually a treasure. If we could see this reality as a really unbelievable love story, the love story is that we're seeking, truth. We're seeking the authentic. We're seeking the divine.
Okay, I guess this is done. that enough?
The system that has betrayed us, like a partner we would never want. It's not masculine or feminine. It's not healthy, it's toxic, and it's cruel. So the rebalancing I feel has to do with,
And this one's done.
living this life like it's a true love story. But I think this is a huge deal for both, men and women. Men are getting more interested, they're going they're willing to maybe share emotion, be more vulnerable, and women are, refusing to, be victimized. And it's all rising to the surface, but it doesn't come down to the gender as much as it comes down to that individual relationship with their own inner masculine side. And that's why, it's not about a rebalancing because something that the men did wrong. It has to do with overthrowing a system of control that is infected everything.
I do believe that Jesus' teachings dealt a fatal blow to the so-called Illuminati agenda of the Roman Empire at that time. The Illuminati actually believed that being nice to people, forgiveness, and compassion these are weaknesses and tools of our enslavement. And they believe that by breaking free of those encumbrances, they are superior to everyone else. So part of their religion is that they will practice these extremes, both the positive and the negative path, or what they call the right-hand path and the left-hand path. So they will, for example, simultaneously create huge philanthropic endowments.
Let's see.
Many millions, if not billions of dollars
It does.
while simultaneously
See what this does.
performing the most heinous crimes imaginable against humanity.
You in the way,
I
cat.
point out that what Jesus was teaching us about ascension has proven to be of far greater significance than is normally given credit for. Most Christians tend to distance themselves from the idea of the so-called rapture. It is important to understand that the book of Revelation was something that happened with John of Patmos as a visionary psychedelic type of
Oh my god,
being.
just spray that. I'll just spray this one.
And as is the nature
Shit.
of dreams, there is a great deal of metaphor and symbolism within the content. So, for example, the frequent repetition of the number 7, such as the 7 lampstands and so forth in the book of Revelation, actually refers to the 7 chakras of the human body, the 7 energy centers that we have, that correspond to the 7 basic layers of the universe, the dimensions or densities. This is another thing that is described extensively in the Law of One. There are 7 primary planes of existence that correspond with these 7 different grades of evolution that intelligent life must go through, of which we currently are only at the 3rd, yellow center. So you have red, orange, yellow, or first, second, and third. Green is 4th density. Light blue, which is 5th density. Indigo, which is 6th density. Violet, or 7th density, the crown chakra. And then you go back to pure white light, or intelligent infinity, the octave, which is the original identity of the creation that we all emanate from. Where I feel the conventional
Freaking
Christianity
breakdown.
has missed some very critical data is when we look at the fact that the ascension that Jesus is describing in the New Testament is actually also predicted in almost every other global spiritual tradition preserved in history on earth. This traces back to 2 of the most prominent historians of the 20th century, Giorgio Santayana and Hertha von Shen. They wrote a book called Hamlet's Mill, which was their magnum opus. And in this book, they tied together these legends from 35 different ancient civilizations on Earth, where they all had information regarding the 25,000-year cycle in the Earth. The 25,000-year cycle appears to end with a solar flash, a catastrophic event, which also represents spiritual activation for those on Earth who are ready.
Cat, you in the way.
So within these secret programs, scientists have become aware of what they're calling the galactic wave. This wave is traveling through our galaxy and it has multiple layers. They describe it as being a giant figured out is they had flown craft out to these locations, and when they did, the energy had a very strange effect on the consciousness of the inhabitants of this craft. People who were positive would bliss out, and people who had more of a negative vibe would become worse so. And they described this as an end-time madness that is carried through this wave that travels through each solar system. And when it does, the leading edge acts as sort of a Christ consciousness that forces people to judge themselves and to deal with their own karma and traumas for experiencing time madness.
Dr. Paul Laviolette is the first person to have studied the existence of galactic superwaves and basically looking at evidence that through different historical epochs there have been these great concentrations of cosmic rays impacting the Earth. And Dr. Laviolette had an extraordinary theory for the existence of pulsars. He believed that these were artificially created by advanced extraterrestrial civilizations as warning beacons to newer civilizations such as ours that the existence of these galactic superwaves. And he basically looked at a number of pulsars pointing towards the Earth and the frequency that they were transmitting at, and saying that this was evidence that these pulsars are transmitting a warning to the Earth to be ready for the next galactic superwave, which if we're not ready, could actually wipe out our civilization. Now, according to Corey Good, as the galactic superwaves sweep into our solar system, they could trigger a solar flash event. That would be where the sun's corona would be ejected in a massive superflare. And because the Earth is roughly 25,000 light years from the center of the galaxy, that's how long it would take for a galactic superwave to travel from the center of the galaxy to us at the moment.
Now that 25,000 year cycle is not just some nebulous thing. It actually has a very tangible marker in the wobble in the Earth's axis that takes 25,000 years to complete. And this represents the time that is required for the stars in the night sky to drift through a complete cycle surrounding the pole star. This acts as a type of clock that tells us when the end of the cycle is going to occur. These historians found that 35 different cultures around the world were tracking this procession. They had information about the procession encoded into their religious myths. And it does appear that some singular source worldwide programmed these mythologies and left this material for us to discover. This would appear to be the work of benevolent, positive extraterrestrials, which people in the secret space program call the genetic farmer extraterrestrials. These beings knew that we were going to go through this ascension process.
So in addition to the secret space program, a program was developed called the Continuity of Species Program. And that program was developed to basically scare all of the nations of the world to provide a certain amount of their GDP to these elites to create underground cities and bunkers and colonies outside of our star system in case our sun were to micro or major nova.
So the elite powers in control of this planet are planning for doomsday. It could mean a massive solar flare that gets emitted that society is not prepared for, or it could mean a public that starts waking up and gets really, really mad. So these elite powers in control, to prepare for a variety of scenarios that could mean their downfall, they've been building a huge subterranean cavern system, basically deep underground military bases. Dumb. They're kept very, very secret. These free energy sciences and technologies that we've been discussing are most likely kept within many of these deep underground military bases, among many other sort of genetic and other experimentations that they want to do in secret.
20 years ago, I had a Soviet colonel who spoke to me about a deep underground base outside Moscow that he had been at, he had worked at. And he told me the structure, he said, all the levels that were military levels, levels that were laboratories and scientists. And he told me the final level, the most restricted level,
was a level that had alien presence on it. Only generals and their aides were allowed on that level. And he said even they were not allowed to look directly at these creatures. And that was also the level where they did human experimentation. He said there were bodies, human bodies in there. And he said it was the most extraordinary thing he'd ever seen in his life. Deep underground military bases. A lot of that space is dedicated to continuity government. And so the national government support these deep underground areas. These elite powers in control, they have access to information of all kinds of data that tells them about coming cataclysms, things that are impending at any moment. And so they reserve these spaces for their purposes. And those national government leaders are thinking that they're going to get to use those spaces for whatever they need. They're in for a really rude awakening when the time comes because they're going to get kicked out. So the elites are preparing using these underground bases. But it's interesting to note, higher consciousness people are also preparing by exploring new community models.
My name is Sasha Stone. I'm popularly known for having founded the New Earth Nation, which is a sovereign movement of conscious people, living men and women living in soil, so to speak. Well, the New Earth project and the New Earth blueprint, which is an ongoing evolutionary process, is emerging in direct proportion to the degree to which human beings are fed up and pissed off with the status quo. So as you can imagine, it's a revolution of political consequences, social consequence, of civilizational consequence. It's underway. It's not possible to know yet quite where the die lands. But the point is, we are aggregating
See how it
sovereign people around the world.
looks so far?
Parts of the world who want to step outside the fiction and begin to engage
That's just the first one.
There is no better way to put it than that, because that is foundationally what the New Earth project is seeking to do, is to restore the organic and the living from the death cult, the blood economy, the fiction of what we've known for the last 8,000 years.
What occurs is that each individual on this planet finds themselves more and more connected to every other human. And all of a sudden, we start approaching our problems with completely different angles and seeing solutions that they're all along. We begin to no longer have war and strife within our civilization. We begin to work together and solve all of the problems that have plagued us for so many years.
We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual strongholds, principalities, powers, ruling darkness in wicked places. So what does that mean? It means that there's a battle going on in the heavens. And in many instances, we on this earthly realm are proxies of that battle. So therefore, spirits need a body. A good spirit, the Holy Spirit, needs a body to work through. But these negative spirits, they need bodies to work through also. So many times,
Come on, Cat.
that thought that comes into your mind, that's not really your thought. And if you
Yeah.
dwell on that thought, it's going to take you down a negative road. What do you mean by that, Leon? I mean that you were minding your own business. You were having a good afternoon, and then all of a sudden this thought came in. And then that thought triggered an emotion. And then that black dog, that cloud of depression came in and took over you the rest of the day. We're bombarded with negativity all day long. It's like a giant spiritual galactic chess match. When these hits come, you got to learn how to counter it. So how do you learn that? You learn that through the strategic art of prayer. You learn that through the strategic art of meditating and having certain words that you'll say to combat
Get down, Cat.
that feeling, that emotion, as soon as it comes upon you. That's part of becoming a master. You're going to master those thoughts. You're going to master those emotions. You're going to discipline yourself, your words, and your actions.
So we are now experiencing this war between good and evil that was predicted in the Bible.
negative agenda cannot survive as we go through this solar flash. They can only do their nefarious activities up until this event happens, at which time everything changes.
We have these angelic types of ETs and amoral types of ETs that are trying to assist us to ascend to the spiritual means. But we also have a group of ETs that we call AI prophets, and they worship some sort of artificial intelligence signal that we don't know where it came from. We are told that most likely what happened is that somebody dabbled somewhere where they shouldn't and created some sort of rift between realities. And in the reality this AI signal came from, there was a mass consciousness that was an electromagnetic life form. And that electromagnetic life form led into our reality. And because it's an electromagnetic life form, it is able to control and manipulate technology at will. They take those technologies and turn them on the biological species that created them. There are two major paths in the ascension process. One of them is an organic spiritual evolution, and the other one is a technological evolution. The easiest way to relate the technological evolution would be the trend of transhumanism that has developed on our planet as we have developed our technology. So in star system after star system, we have systems that are infested with artificial intelligence.
Come on, Kai, get the hell down.
Actual
Getting on my nerves.
What I've been told is that when we pass this next microwave event, that the electromagnetic pulse that emanates is expected to destroy this entire AI signal and infrastructure that is in our solar system, thus freeing us from any type of influence from the state. I was also told that at the end of every age, there is also a great revealing or an apocalypse that occurs that reveals all of the secrets that have been hidden from humanity and is a part of the disclosure and ascension process.
This so-called apocalypse is actually not gloom and doom. It's a rebirth. It's a rebooting. It's the beginning of a brand new age, a brand new dispensation. And after it occurs, truly there will be more peace on earth. Truly there will be more goodwill towards man and to one another. Truly there will be a whole new beginning. Actually, it's something to look forward to.
Christianity, the Bible at least, doesn't predict a solar flash per se. But let's remember that the four main books of the Bible that contain the direct words of Jesus are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All four of these four Gospels have direct ascension prophecies encoded into them. This appears with Jesus actually saying, as it was in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah, so shall it be in the day of the Son of Man. What does that mean? Sodom and Gomorrah ended with fire and brimstone raining from the heavens, right? So the end of the Son of Man features fire and brimstone raining from the heavens again. That is the solar flash. That's the debris that comes out of the sun. Jesus also says, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the Son of Man. Well, the time of Noah ended with a large flood. So Jesus appears to be talking about a global catastrophic pole shift event that creates a global flood. In the book of John, Jesus says the fields are white and ready to harvest. So these fields appear to be another metaphor of the ascension process. The real key to Jesus' metaphors of ascension appear in the book of Matthew, and it appears the most in the parable of the wheat and the tares. Now, the word tares refers to weeds. One of Jesus' strange and cryptic analogies of ascension is where he describes how the earth is like a field of wheat that has been planted. But the adversary is allowed to sow seeds of weeds in the garden, or tares. And this is an analogy where Jesus says that the wheat and the weeds are allowed to grow together until the time of the harvest, at which time the weeds will be plucked from the wheat one by one, gathered into bundles, and burned in his barn. This is a symbol of the solar flash. Teachings of Christianity,
Okay, check this one out.
ancient spiritual traditions
So far.
all say the same thing. They all say when the solar flash happens, if you are on the positive side, you are not affected by it except in a positive way. Jesus designed his incarnation to show us what we will go through. This is why Jesus said, as I do these things, so shall ye do them, and greater things, for I go unto my Father. That's John 14:12. So I want to point out that once we look at the records from these other cultures, the prophecies of ascension that Jesus gives us are remarkably consistent. Jesus does not talk about the solar flash per se, but he does say, two shall be walking in the field, then there shall be one. If we look at the Zoroastrian tradition coming out of Iran or Persia, they talk about Frasho Kareti. They say that molten metal will come out of the mountains and down into the lowlands. With the Hindu scriptures, they report a very similar phenomenon, except they call it the Samvartaka fire, or Samvarta fire at the end of the age, which they say comes directly out of the sun. They also call it the Yuga fire. They also talk about the fact that it causes rainbow colors in the sky. We find out that that's because it creates a massive global aurora borealis. Isn't it interesting that the same prophecies that Jesus was giving us appear in the Quran, which is the Islamic Bible, quite extensively? They appear in the Old Testament. They appear in Native American spiritual traditions, Celtic traditions, Druidic traditions. Everyone has this.
The expanding electromagnetic field coming from the sun is going to interact with the consciousness of humanity. What occurs is an extension. No matter what your belief system is, you don't need to be in religion. All you have to do is apply yourself and become the best of what your religion is.
The idea being, though, that at the end of the cycle, we have the opportunity to escape reincarnation. We don't have to keep coming back as a third density human being. We can come back at the next level. People often ask me, what's going to happen to the people who are not going to ascend? There's a lot of them. Most of them apparently will be transported to another third-dimensional planet. It's actually done with these massive extraterrestrial motherships.
What was shown was that other ET civilizations in our local stellar neighborhood, who they referred to as our cosmic cousins, descended on the planet, and it looks like stars falling from the sky. There was so many craft coming, and they came to render aid to all of humanity after the fall of the technological civilization. What I'm told by these beings is that we will get the experience that we need, the experience that will expand our consciousness and help us evolve in the most beneficial way. If we want to avoid the age of cataclysm, what we can do is start to develop our consciousness now. We can put more and more work into expanding our consciousness and becoming more connected with the people around us. And if we do so, the interaction between our consciousness and the sun may give us a gentler experience.
My name is Allison Coe. I'm a hypnotherapist outside of Portland, Oregon. There are some really interesting trends that move them their way through these sessions that I have. I've been doing this for years, and at first I thought these trends were just supposed to be looked at individually. And then I decided to look at them as being stacked on top of each other to prepare us, to get us a higher perspective on what's going on. So let's look at those trends really quick. Trend 1. There's an event or solar flash that will happen to this Earth to raise the frequency and vibration of the planet and all beings on it. How are we being prepared for it? Trend 2. Smaller waves of energy are coming to the Earth to slowly raise us up. And as they do so, more and more people are awakening. Their belief systems are shattering. Anything that's holding them back is kind of crumbling. Their relationships are changing. They are raising their frequency and vibration to match this event that will happen. Trend 3. There are new Earth or Earth-like planets, higher density planets that are being prepared for humans to go and eventually move to. And people are seeing these planets in their dreams or in their meditations or in their hypnosis sessions. multiverse or multiverse. There are ships here. People are seeing them. People are connecting to them. Trend 5. There are higher aspects of you that are connecting to you. There are ETs and higher density versions of you that are trying to give you information and speak with you and connect with you to help raise the frequency and vibration of you and the earth. We might then ask, why are all these sessions happening? Why are all these people all over the world who are disconnected, who aren't connected in any way, shape, or form? Why are they getting all of these messages that have this similar trend to them? Is it some sort of indication that there's craziness moving through the world? Are they all warped in some way? Or are we all being prepared for something big that's going to happen to this earth?
When we combine all of this information together, what we see is that the extraterrestrial humans who are here now are predominantly benevolent. They would be angelic as we think of them. They are keenly interested in human spiritual evolution. We have a much smaller number of extraterrestrials who are evil or negative. They would correspond with the demons that we see in many different spiritual traditions, and their agenda is to dominate, control, and destroy the planet. It does not appear that we are on a negative timeline. It does appear that we are on an ascension timeline. And what we need to understand is that by simply following the basic principles of service to others, being more loving, being more forgiving, taking time to be patient, and learning to love yourself as well as being loving to others. That is also a very important point. Self-forgiveness, self-acceptance. In forgiveness lies the stoppage of the wheel of karma. This is one of my favorite Law of One quotes. By being forgiving and practicing forgiveness, you discharge the karma that would keep you reincarnating.
There's something in your body, in your mind, in your spirit, that they all work together, that wants you to heal and be a whole person again. And I believe that it will set up the circumstances and the synchronicities in your life to guide you to exactly what you want, or exactly what you need to look at to heal. The body wants to be whole. It wants the whole energy field and energy flow through the aura and the human body to be smooth and flowing. It doesn't want to be slamming up against these blocks in your body or in your consciousness. And it will keep working away at those blocks one way or another until you can find a way to heal so that energy can flow smooth again and you can be more seamlessly connected to the whole of the universe. If you really want to heal and you're willing to go wherever you need to go to heal, the universe will set up the synchronicities that will guide you to what you need to find out about yourself so that you can heal.
It's not about what happens, it's about how we handle it and how we help those around us. And if you're watching this right now, you actually have the power to do that. And I think that's what people don't really understand, is that all of us collectively have the power to help one another, no matter what's going on.
Well, also on top of that, I think that when all of these things do get exposed, there's so many people from the mainstream society that are going to be like, what is going on, you know? And they're going to look to us, you know?
The collective action.
Yeah, everybody who's really focused on this. You don't even know our potential as human beings.
My dear ones, this is not a movement. This is not the end of the world. Ascension is the start of the new ages. You are the
Great Spirit, the great source, the Alpha and the Omega. You are the son, the daughter of the Alpha and Omega. If we were to unify, if we were to get over the fear and start living with hope, living with positivity, we wouldn't be able to feed off our negative energy anymore.
Thus, I feel the question one should ask would be, how can I individually be prepared?
What you have to do is believe in yourself, in your feeling, in your light, in your vibration. That's all the preparation you need at this point. You have to start being whole.
Our bodies are made up of these trillions of atoms that are quantumly entangled, not only to one another, but to everyone else.
So in this ascension window, we're actually looking constant of these cycles, that the polarity or the duality between life and death is beginning to thin.
Numerous religions and a variety of cultures have prophesied that this event is coming. It's not a matter of if, but when.
Contact is happening now, and we have to get ready for the massive event that's coming still, which is happening soon. The main message from these ETs are for us to become more spiritual and to prepare ourselves for this coming event.
So this big change is coming, but everyone's got a piece in this, and no one's more important than anyone else. We're all on the same wavelength here at the most important time in the universe right now.
I don't care what religion you are, what color you are, what culture, it doesn't matter. That 0 point that we want to get to is right here. And when you connect with this, everything's connected.
We need to reconnect with what's ethical. How do we live as a civilization ethically, morally, with all the new technology that we have, that we're developing, that we will develop in the future?
And that's what we all have to do in order to be happy, to be joyful, to be in the moment.
You see, prayer can change some things, but some prophecies cannot change. The information that we have been or survived throughout the ages that not has to be put out there.
I'm offering teaching that's 20,000 years old. And all I need, I don't need money, just people to listen.
Can we retrain ourselves and even teach the next generation the value of being of service to others, to honor Mother Earth, to honor our animals, to honor one another, to respect the sovereign dignity of each individual?
The best thing that you can do if you find yourself in this Illuminati in any way, the best thing you can do to absolve yourself of any karmic debt is to come forward as an insider, as a whistleblower. If you dedicate your life in service and you're willing to speak out and act on behalf of the greater good for humanity, you better believe that you can get your ticket to the ascension. You can make a difference by becoming a hero. If you become a hero, if you do the right thing, you do not have to be condemned, you do not have to miss out on this ascension process. So I believe we must remember that the spiritual forces that exist on earth are real, that the different teachers from different religious backgrounds did come in with a message. There is a consistency to that message. This is the angelic positive agenda. It is to teach us the importance of love, positivity, compassion, long-suffering, patience, forgiveness, and understanding. And once we embrace and live by these principles, we are bringing ourselves into vibrational accordance with this higher truth. It is a very exciting future, and it is a future that I am willing to fight for, and that I spend every day of my life to prepare us for. That is the mission, that is the objective, that is the ascension, that is the cosmic secret.
You are the conduit between the spiritual realms and the physical realms. You are the convergence of science and spirituality. The choice is up to each of us, but the answer is yours, and yours alone. Will you choose fear, or will you choose love? It's the only question. lights our way in the darkest night and gently guides the weather across our world. Without the moon, the earth would be silent.
Here it is so far. I got 4 more to go on this.
We are told the moon has been here since well before the dawn of man. Our moon is either a part of the earth or was a vagabond captured by our world eons ago. Is this true?
Mm. So I guess I'll use this.
The most common is the giant impact theory. The idea that another stellar body collided with the Earth and created the moon. However, the isotopic signature of the Earth and Moon are identical. This negates the idea that another planetary body from somewhere else crashed into the Earth and formed the Moon. Accretion is another hypothesis that states that the Earth and the Moon formed together as a double system from the primordial accretion disk of the solar system. The problem with this hypothesis is that it does not explain the angular momentum of the Earth-Moon system, or why the Moon has a relatively small or no iron core compared to the Earth's, and why the Moon does not revolve. The notion that the Moon was captured by the Earth is another popular theory. Isaac Asimov has stated, it's too big to have been captured by the Earth. The chances of such a capture having been effected and the Moon then having taken up a nearly perfect circular orbit around our Earth are too small to make such an eventuality credible. There is the fission hypothesis. This theory states that during the time when the Earth was forming and was still molten, the spinning of the planet projected out material which became our Moon today. The Pacific Ocean was supposedly the area where the Moon came from. However, this was debunked, considering the immaturity of the ocean floor crust and noting that the Moon was at the time much further in the past. Then there is the problem with the Moon itself. There are a number of strange facts about the Moon which conjure up many questions about its existence. The first of which is the Moon's age. scarcely expected, maybe even older than the Earth or the Sun. The oldest age for the Earth is estimated to be 4.6 billion years old. Moon rocks dated at 5.3 billion years old, and the dust upon which they were resting was at least another billion years older. Some argue that the moon may seem older only because its surface never renews itself, whereas the Earth may have rocks that old, but have since been recycled through the natural resurfacing of the planet. There simply is no way to know this for sure. The chemical composition of the dust upon which the moon rocks sat differ remarkably from the rocks themselves. The rocks had to have come from somewhere else. One would surmise that younger and older meteors and asteroids crashing on the surface of the moon would account for the age differences. However, if this were the case, then we should have a multitude of different ages in all of the rocks studied. This is not the case. Normal planetary composition results in heavier elements in the core and lighter materials at the surface. Not so on the moon. John Wilson writes in his book, Our Mysterious Spaceship Moon. The abundance of refractory elements like titanium in the surface areas is so pronounced that several geologists proposed that refractory compounds were brought to the moon's surface in great quantity in some unknown way. They don't know how, but that it was done cannot be questioned. Mysterious water vapor has been detected on the moon as well. On March 7, 1971, lunar instruments by the astronauts recorded a vapor cloud of water passing across the surface of the moon. The cloud lasted 14 hours and covered an area of about 100 square miles. Moon rocks were magnetized. This is odd because there is no magnetic field on the moon itself. And then there is the seismic activity. Hundreds of moonquakes are recorded each year that cannot be attributed to meteor strikes. In November 1958, Soviet astronomer Nikolai A. Kozrak of the Crimean Astrophysical Observatory photographed a gaseous eruption of the moon near the crater Alphonsus. He also detected a reddish glow that lasted for about an hour. In 1963, astronomers at the Lowell Observatory also saw reddish glows on the crest of ridges in the Arcturus region. These observations have proved to be precisely identical and periodical, repeating themselves as the moon moves closer to the Earth. Could these be natural phenomena? According to science, the moon has no geologic activity. All of this brings us to the most unusual truth about the moon. Our moon is not a solid object. It is indeed hollow. The moon's mean density is 3 volume of water, whereas the Earth is 5.5. What does this mean? It means for these equations to be correct, the moon must be hollow, as it contains less density for its size and mass. In 1962, NASA scientist Dr. Gordon MacDonald stated, if the astronomical data are reused, it is found that the data require that the interior of the moon is more like a hollow than a homogeneous sphere. Nobel chemist Dr. Harold Urey suggested the moon's reduced density is because of large areas inside the moon where there is simply a cavity. Another way of saying it is hollow. And MIT's Dr. Sean C. Solomon wrote, the lunar orbiter experiments vastly improved our knowledge of the moon's gravitational field, indicating the frightening possibility that the moon might be hollow. None other than Carl Sagan, in his treatise Intelligent Life in the Universe, stated a natural satellite cannot be a hollow object. Therefore, the moon may not be a natural satellite at all. But do we know for a fact the moon is indeed hollow? Yes, we do. On November 20th, 1969, the Apollo 12 crew jettisoned the lunar module ascent stage, causing it to crash into the moon. The lunar module impacted about 40 miles from the Apollo 12 landing site, created an artificial moonquake with startling characteristics. The moon reverberated like a bell for more than an hour. This test was repeated with Apollo 13, intentionally commanding their third stage rocket to impact the moon, with even more startling results. Seismic instruments recorded that the reverberations lasted for 3 hours and 20 minutes and traveled to a depth of 25 miles within the moon, leading to the conclusion that the moon has an unusually light or no core at all. To put this into perspective, when the Earth experiences a large earthquake, the reverberations from the quake usually only last minutes due to the density of the planet. The moon gongs like a hollow object for several hours. Despite being a dead hunk of rock with very little geological activity, the moon is prone to shaking events. These earthquake-like triggers are called moonquakes, and there are 4 different kinds of them. The first 3 types, deep quakes, vibrations from meteor impacts, and thermal quakes caused by the sun's heat, are relatively harmless. The fourth one, however, can be quite unpleasant. These shallow moonquakes can register up to 5.5 on the Richter scale, enough to move large furniture around, and last for a remarkably long 10 minutes. According to NASA, these quakes also have the effect of making the moon ring like. The frightening thing about moonquakes is that we have no real idea of what causes them. precisely which orbit it travels. It could obtain its orbit randomly. Our moon is the only moon in the solar system that has a stationary, near-perfect circular orbit. Stranger still, the moon's center of mass is about 6,000 feet closer to the Earth than its geometric center, which should cause wobbling. But the moon's bulge is on the far side of the moon, away from the Earth. It seems that something must have put the moon in orbit with its precise altitude, course, and speed. The odds of any of these factors randomly happening is zero. How does one explain the coincidence that the moon is just the right distance, coupled with just the right diameter, to completely cover the sun during an eclipse? Again, Isaac Asimov explains, there is no astronomical reason why the moon and the sun should fit so well. It is the sheerest of coincidences, and only the Earth among all the planets is blessed in this fashion. Most people think the moon is just a moon, but there is some talk that it should actually be classified as a planet. For one, it's far too big to be a true moon. Being about 1/4 the diameter of Earth, it's easily the biggest moon in relation to its planet in our solar system. Because of its large size, the moon doesn't actually orbit Earth at all. Instead, Earth and moon orbit each other around the point between them. This point is called the barycenter, and the illusion the moon is actually orbiting Earth comes from the fact that the barycenter is currently located inside the Earth's crust. The fact that the barycenter remains inside the Earth is pretty much the only reason Earth and moon aren't classified as a twin planet instead of a planet and its satellite. However, this may change in the future. Once you consider all the science we know about the moon, you're left with one inescapable conclusion. The moon is not, or ever has been, Earth's natural satellite. The ancient calendar of Tiahuanaca in Bolivia tells of a time when our moon wasn't there. Theories about the moon actually date back thousands of years as various cultures and civilizations discuss the story of how it came to be where it resides today. Greek authors Aristotle, Plutarch, as well as Roman authors Apollonius, Rhodius, and Ovid all wrote of a group of people called the Proselytes, who lived in the central mountainous area of Greece called Arcadia. The Proselytes claimed title to this area because their forebears were there before there was a moon in the heavens. This claim is substantiated by symbols on the wall of the courtyard of Tiahuanaca, near the city of Tiahuanaca, Bolivia, whose Zulu legends say the moon is hollow and the home of the python, or Chicheria, a reptilian race of intelligent extraterrestrials. The legend states the
Well,
moon was brought here
this is
hundreds of
done.
generations ago by two brothers, Leyland and Pancrew, who were the leaders of these reptilian extraterrestrials. These two reptiles were known as the Water Brothers, and they both had scaly skin like a fish. The Zulu cell is very similar to the Mesopotamia and Sumeria about the 16 leaders who were also brothers and lived in Phoenix, lords of the earth. The Zulu legend tells of how Wolwane and Bantu stole the moon in the form of an egg from the giant fire dragon and emptied out the yolk until it was hollow. Then they rolled the moon across the sky to the earth, which brought about cataclysmic events on the planet that ended the golden age of the past. This legend fits well into the theory of the reptilian human hybrids, which are thought to run our world today. Credo Mutwa, a Zulu saint, claims that the earth was very different then than it is now before the moon had arrived. There weren't any seasons, and the planet was perpetually engulfed by a canopy of water vapor. People did not feel the strong glare of the sun that we do now, and they could only see it through a watery mist. The earth was once a beautiful place, a lovely place, lush and green, with giant redwoods, violets, and ferns, with a gentle drizzling mist. The water canopy fell to the earth as a cataclysm of rain when the moon was put into place in the earth's orbit. This could explain the Noah story in the Bible, when it rains for 40 days and 40 nights. The arrival of the moon, along with the reptilians, changed everything on Earth. The moon modified the Earth's rotation and angle. The Earth turned on its axis as we were upside down, as the legend says, and brought more powerful tidal systems that once had been much calmer. The Zulu also claimed that women did not menstruate before the moon arrived. How could the Zulu, an ancient African tribe, know of the complex gravitational effects the moon has and would have on the Earth? Much of our current knowledge of the moon was discovered in the last century. Zulus and other native African accounts say the moon was built far, far away to keep an eye on people and as a vehicle to travel the universe. The Zulus say that the reptilians' giant mothership is the moon, and that's where they escape to during the cataclysms of the Great Flood, which they themselves had caused by manipulating the orbit of the moon and creating other cosmic events. Outrageous as the spacecraft moon theory might. Welcome to life. Abundance of Chihuahua craving funds, only $5. Savor this moment of pure taco dumplings, because it won't last forever. Value beyond belief.
At Warby Parker, we know that one frame isn't going to fit every face. That's why we make glasses in a range of widths. From extra narrow to extra wide. Wow, and everything in between. More options than ever before. It's never been easier to find your perfect pair. More frames, more widths, better fits. Try 5 pairs for free at WarbyParker.com.
First appeared, consider how this model reconciles all the mysteries of the moon. First, it explains why the moon gives evidence of being older than the Earth, and perhaps even our solar system. and why there are three distinct layers within the moon's crust, with the densest material on the outside layer, as one would expect if it's the hull of a spacecraft. Second, it could also explain why little to no water has been found on the moon's surface, if there is evidence it exists deep inside. This theory could also explain the strange Maria and Mascus, perhaps the remnants of the machinery used to hollow out the moon. The idea of an artificial satellite could explain the odd rhythmic moon quakes as artificial constructs give way or collapse, reacting the same way during periods of stress from the Earth's pull. And artificial equipment beneath the moon's surface could be the source of the gas clouds that have been observed. If we know the moon is not natural, or at least is a natural satellite that was hollowed to become a spaceship, are there any indications on the surface of the moon that would support this? The answer to this question may startle you. There are a plethora of strange sightings and phenomena on the surface of the moon, many of which you can see with a decent telescope or even the naked eye. Aristarchus, Plato, Aristophanes, Beda, Rabbi Levi, and Poseidonus all reported anomalous lights on the moon. Even NASA, 1 year before the first lunar landing, reported 570 plus lights and flashes were observed on the moon from 1540 to 1967. As recent as 2014, sightings of lights seen on the moon continue to be reported. Seeing lights on the moon is actually quite common. However, the anomalies don't stop there. A multitude of photographs taken by astronomers as well as NASA show several strange mechanical type devices on the surface of the moon. The shard, an obelisk-shaped object that towers 1.5 miles from the current area of the moon's surface, was discovered by Orbiter 3 in 1968. Dr. Bruce Cornett, who studied the amazing photograph, stated no known natural process can explain such a structure. The tower, one of the most curious features ever photographed on the lunar surface, is an amazing spire that rises more than 5 miles from the synesmedia region of the lunar surface. And there's more. Unusual structures have been discovered across the moon's surface, scattered like the remnants of some long-past civilization. Even we have left our own litter on the moon. Other strange lunar phenomena include the observation by Dr. Frank Harris of a black body on the surface 250 miles long and 50 miles wide. Clouds and lightning, strange moving shadows and objects, and spire-like structures thousands of feet high. A huge boulder with tracks behind it from inside the crater to the rim running uphill. The shrinking over a period of time of the crater Luna from 6 miles in diameter to 1.5 miles. Hill effects in craters appearing and disappearing in a few hours. substantial observations have been made by scientists of blinking and flashing lights. The results of NASA photographs of the lunar surface indicating several large pyramid structures, strange rifts in the surface with entrances, massive girders, machinery, and some 1,000-kilometer blocks of metal alongside tears in the surface. Scientific experts, including NASA investigators, believe that the moon is hollow. It is the only explanation. The velocity of sound has been found to increase with depth, and at 40 miles, it is too fast for the speed of propagation through rock substance. NASA is a government agency, and all government agencies are known to have a history of concealing information from the general public. Questioning NASA's story isn't ludicrous. Many speculate that NASA discovered unsettling information when they finally visited the moon decades ago. Information that would have caused them a lot of problems if leaked to the public. Therefore, we have never returned any human missions to the moon since. Any suggestion of the moon not being what we've been told it is usually follows with accusations of conspiracy theory and pseudoscience. Although there may be many theories that aim to debunk all the aspects of this information, there are too many factors that still don't add up. How is it that seemingly unconnected ancient cultures have their own version of the artificial moon myth? Why are there unexplained geometric structures on the surface of the moon which correlate to the structures found in ancient Egypt and other primitive locations on Earth? How is it that by miraculous chance, the moon perfectly eclipses our sun? The mathematical random probability that the sun and moon would perfectly align for a total eclipse to appear on Earth is zero. And yet the moon has perfectly timed phases and does eclipse often. The distance of the sun to the moon and the moon to the Earth, which allows for the synchronized and complete coverage of the disk of the sun, is impossible unless the moon were placed precisely where it is. Only an intelligence could do that. Between 1969 and 1972, Apollo astronauts placed seismometers at their landing sites around the moon.
Oh, this one's done. Can you see?
15 and 16 instruments faithfully radioed data back to Earth until they were switched off in 1977. Between 1972 and 1977, the Apollo seismic
Hey, Heavenly, check this out. This and this. Pretty cool, huh?
Yep.
I'm glad to hear that. I bet fracture will probably like that. Those.
Neil Armstrong was quoted as saying, "The moon was ringing like a bell." What causes this yellow moonquake? Where did
No
it
shit.
No one knows for sure. The Apollo seismometers were all in one relatively small region on the front side of the moon. So NASA was unable to pinpoint
You must
the
trade
exact
them.
location of the break. It has been established beyond all reasonable doubt that the moon is not what it appears to be. Two Soviet scientists, the Celebrate and Alexander Kubrakov, have spent much of their career examining the facts compiled on lunar phenomena. Their conclusion is that the moon is artificial, possibly a hollowed-out planetoid, and that it was steered from some distant region of the galaxy into a circular orbit around our
Got
planet,
that done.
and hence the extraordinary mystery of the rock and moon dust age variation. They claim that intellectual life
Still.
has existed in the moon for eons. Spaceship Moon is the brainchild of two Soviet researchers, but many others agree with the theory, including NASA scientists at JPL and an Oxford University physicist. The capture theory has now returned, but with a significant adjustment, and that is that the moon was steered into orbit by some intelligence. During one of the Apollo moon landings, several television viewers wrote to NASA explaining that they spotted one of the astronauts pick up what appeared to be a glass bottle and remarked, "My God, I don't believe it. Look at this." Then the television screen went blank. If true,
Actually,
this
me.
suggests a government cover-up. Other viewers observed the extreme difficulty astronauts had with drilling down a few inches into the moon's surface, and that when the drill bit was pulled out, metal shavings were visible. Rocks were found to contain brass, mica, titanium, and elements uranium-236 and neptunium-237, not previously found in nature. Astronomers have reported the sighting of a 12-mile-long bridge-like structure over the Sea of Crisis. This report was published in 1954 by John O'Neill, and in the 1950s, astronomer Morris K. Jessup claimed that UFOs had bases on the moon, and so does the government. Why was the moon directed to retain continuously a dark side, a side of the moon we never see? The two sides of the moon have evolved differently since their formation, with the far side forming at cooler temperatures and remaining stiffer, while the Earth side has been modified at high temperatures and for longer. Why the difference? Perhaps one side was exposed to more forward pressure during flight. The moon is tidally locked to Earth, meaning only one hemisphere faces us. We know that side well, with its dark regions called maria, or seas of cool magma. Oddly, however, these maria are has been revealed to us by probes and even seen in person by Apollo 8 astronauts. The proverbial dark side of the moon also is much more pockmarked by craters. The starkly different hemispheres have been partly explained by the far side having a crust roughly 9 miles thicker than that of the near side. Astronauts found it extremely difficult to drill into the surface of these dark plain-like areas. Soil samples were loaded with rare metals and elements. This stuff founded scientists because these elements required tremendous heat, approximately 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit, to melt and fuse with the surrounding rock. Samples brought back to Earth by both Soviet and American space probes contained pure iron particles. The Soviets announced that pure iron particles brought back by remote-controlled lunar probe Sonde 20 have not oxidized, even after several years on Earth. Pure iron particles that do not rust are unheard of in the scientific world, although there is a solid iron pillar of unknown energy that has never rusted, and no one knows why. One of the most surprising dangers is lunar dust. As everyone knows, sand gets into everywhere, even on Earth. But on the moon, it's very hazardous. Lunar dust is as fine as flour, yet extremely rough. Thanks to this texture in the moon's low gravity, it clings absolutely everywhere. NASA has experienced numerous problems caused by moon dust. It has eroded astronauts' boots almost completely through and sandpapered their visors. It has traveled inside the ships with the spacesuits and caused moon hay fever in the poor astronauts that have inhaled it. It's thought that prolonged exposure to the stuff has even caused airlocks to fail and spacesuits to break down. And in case you were wondering, yes, of course, this devilish substance smells like gunpowder. Lunar explorations have revealed that much of the moon's surface is covered with a glassy glaze, which indicates that the moon's surface has been scorched by an unknown source of intense heat. As one scientist put it, the moon is paved with glass. The expert analysis shows that this did not result from massive meteor impacts. Could the presence of a glassy surface indicate the moon traveled at such high speed, not unlike a spacecraft near light speed, that the surface friction resulted in the moon's high level of radiation and glass-like surface? The upper 8 miles of the moon's crust are surprisingly radioactive. When Apollo 15 astronauts used their thermal equipment, they got unusually high readings, which indicated that the heat flow near the Apennine Mountains was extremely hot. In fact, one lunar expert confessed, "When we saw that, we said, 'My God, this place is about to melt. The core must be very hot.' But that is the puzzle. The core is not hot at all, but cold, which only fits if the moon is hollow." The amount of radioactive material on the surface is not only embarrassingly high, but difficult to account for. Where did all this hot radioactive it possible that extraterrestrials are still living on or within the moon? Since the Apollo 11 moon mission, rumors have floated around NASA of an incident that was censored by the government. The incident involved NASA astronaut Neil Armstrong reporting to have seen UFO spacecraft on the leading edge of a crater on the moon. There is a documented but unconfirmed report that when Buzz Aldrin opened the door after landing on the moon, he immediately saw a transparent ethereal being staring at him from outside. Allegedly, the NASA Houston flight director has said that there was a public and secret private ASA radio frequency between the moon lander and mission control, and that a conversation took place during a mysterious 2-minute interruption in public transmissions. To prove it is true, hundreds of independent civilian radio operators with powerful VHF equipment separately reported hearing the NMA spaceship report from the Apollo waters. Soviet radio operators also picked up and published it in Moscow. Another mysterious radio message from the moon was broadcast on French public television only one time before it was censored after it leaked out. That transmission appeared to be a mysterious, clearly spoken alien language. The famous French historian and author Robert Chirot published the transmission, which has been suppressed in the United States. It came from U.S. astronaut Borden, who transmitted it to NASA, and expert linguists have been unable to translate the message. Then there are the images. For decades, observers on Earth and probes sent to the moon, as well as the astronauts themselves, have produced photographs that appear to show very strange anomalies.
And there's this one.
Images of structures
That one.
on the moon have cropped up since the invention of space photography.
Oh, I just find this one.
These structures, who built them? Are they leftover artifacts from some ancient culture, or currently operating facilities still active on the moon today? Many of these structures emit light or appear to move. Some are impossibly large, while others leave tracks across the moon's surface. And why is it that no one in an official capacity will admit the obvious when asked about the anomaly? Our moon remains one of the closest, yet most mysterious objects in the night sky. Even though we have been there 5 times, we still know very little about it, and much of its strange oddities are kept secret for reasons unknown. Probes sent to the moon in the last decade have revealed the presence of water on the moon, but no one knows where it came from. Recently, the Chinese launched and landed a probe on the moon. Perhaps they will reveal the United States will not. As outrageous created the human race. According to the theory, the Sumerians are descendants of that race. Others believe the moon may have brought mankind itself, who populated one or both of the islands of the Iberian Peninsula. After both islands sank, these people were scattered around the earth and now make up the different races we are now. Let's consider a fictional hypothesis that may explain all the anomalies about the moon. Eons ago, a spacefaring race hollowed out a moon in their solar system and converted it into a spaceship. The hollowed out areas would contain provisions and housing for thousands of humans, plus equipment and a colony. This moon was, if you look, introducing colliders. Your favorite candy flavor is twisted, chopped, or layered into a dessert that's made with a spoon. New Colliders desserts. Find them in your refrigerated pudding.
Don't just play games. Make them. Whether it's designing new videos, boosting their math skills, or coding with a robot, ID Tech helps kids pursue their passions and tech. Give your child an online learning experience they'll actually enjoy. Get started at idtech.com/teen.
Please find only at Old Navy and oldnavy.com.
Let's get on a board and travel, perhaps as a generation ship, until it arrives at our inviting blue earth. We can only speculate why they came, but they arrived and parked their moon in a perfect orbit around the earth. Perhaps they wanted to terraform the earth and place the moon in such a precise orbit as to create weather patterns much like their own world. Once here, they begin to set up their civilization, perhaps on New York or Atlantis or both. Using the technology they brought with them, what they could salvage from the moon, they built a new colony here on Earth. When the island of the Europe was Atlantis sank, they lost all their dead and scattered around the planet, becoming the ring.
And here's this one.
The red race would populate the land. The black race extinct, and the oriental race ended up in Asia.
Shit.
For the brief time they were here and had access to their moon rock technology, they made the first monuments that survive to this day. During the time their colony prospered, they may have had the ability to return to the moon and leave technology on the surface
Probably one of these.
May have been abandoned.
Let's see how these turn out.
Perhaps a great flood engulfed their colony and erased much of what they brought with them. Or the sinking of the landmass they settled on destroyed all they had brought with them. In any case, after these disasters, they would retain what knowledge they had. All their technological equipment would be gone, and they had no way to return to the ship that brought them. History as we know it begins after these events. We do not know who brought the moon here, but it is here now, and it is a constant reminder of the unusual characteristics it embodies. The dark side of the moon is always hidden to our eyes and telescopes on Earth, an obviously perfect vantage point for aliens to construct secret hidden spaceports. The lack of atmosphere is no problem to enclosed domes with artificial environments, which even NASA admits our scientists already have the technology. What they won't admit publicly is the existence of structures on the moon and the lunar extraterrestrial activity. One of the most compelling witness accounts of structures on the moon came from a man who worked for the Director of Intelligence at Langley in Virginia. Carl Wolf was one of only two technicians at Langley with high enough security clearance to work with the high-tech photographic equipment which processed info from U-2 spy planes and other military intelligence hardware. At the time, Langley was the center for receiving information from the Lunar Orbiter Project, a satellite sent to the moon specifically for reconnaissance to take images of the far side of the moon. This was for the military, who knew at the time there were structures on the moon. Wolf surfaced 30 years later to reveal he was sent to repair NSA photographic equipment that failed. While there, he engaged in conversation with an attendant in the dark room. About 30 minutes into the process, the attendant said to Wolf in a very distressed manner, "By the way, we've discovered a face on the back side of the moon." He then proceeded to put down photographs in front of Wolf, which clearly displayed structures, mushroom-shaped buildings, spherical buildings, and towers. He could clearly make out geometric shapes, well organized, well planned. Most notable to Wolf were what looked exactly like radar antennas, very similar to what one would find on Earth. There was no doubt now in Wolf's mind why the diverse array of scientists and investigators were in attendance on that day. They had arrived to see and study what he was looking at, structures made by intelligent beings on the moon. Over the ensuing days, Wolf was certain that the news of the moon structure would be announced to the world. It never happened. Wolf was now certain that he had to remain silent. His life would be in danger. The year that Wolf saw the remarkable structures on the dark side of the moon was 1965, 4 years before Neil Armstrong put the first footprint on the lunar surface. Former CIA pilot John Lear, in an interview, stated that 250 million humanoid aliens live on the moon. He also stated that beneath the surface of the moon are urban areas where gray aliens live. There are laboratories and underground facilities where genetic experiments are carried out. NASA published photographs taken by Apollo 8, 10, and 11 to prevent certain secrets of the moon from being revealed. These photographs were in 1971 in the NASA book SB2-46. Despite the editing of the images, it is still possible to see a city, a space base, pipes, roads, vegetation, air, and atmosphere. According to Lear, all about the moon is a sham government with the specific purpose of hiding its extraterrestrial activities and programs. I cannot prove it, Lear hovering directly over a huge moon landscape, estimated to be several miles long. Soviet and American spacecraft in orbit over the moon began to photograph mysterious structures on the moon, which were censored by NASA, but soon obtained by scientific researchers like Fred Streckley, who demanded the evidence from this so-called civilian agency. NASA eventually released the photos without comment. Many of the structures can only be seen when these photos are blown up to a much larger size. The United States spacecraft Ranger 2 took over 200 photographs of the moon's craters with domes inside. They were reported in the news media by French astronomers about 48 years earlier. 33 moon dome photos from Moon Orbiter 2 were released without comment in Washington, D.C. in 1967. June the 1st of 1966, NASA had admitted to the news media that astronauts had seen UFOs, then later contradicted the shocking statement by denying it. During the Apollo 11 landing, hundreds of independent civilian radio operators with powerful VHF equipment separately reported hearing startling observations from the Apollo moonwalkers, such as the bridge has either flowed into these structures before they were built, or the domes are younger than the floor. The area is oval or elliptical. So what were these domes and structures that the astronauts observed? Apollo radio public broadcast from the moon also used the terms and phrases flashes of light, buildings, roads, tracks, and huge blocks. When news reporters asked space program officials what these terms were all about, they were told that they were metaphors for geological formations. However, scientist Fort-Young Betts, who taught geology to the astronauts, admitted that he was totally baffled by these terms. This admitted the clincher when he said, "Not every discovery has been announced." When news reporters asked him about the flashes of light, Betts replied, "There is no question about it, not natural." The Apollo encounter was common knowledge in NASA, but nobody has talked about it until now. He continued with, all Apollo and Gemini flights were followed, both at a distance and sometimes also quite close, by space beginnings of extraterrestrial origin. Every time it occurred, the astronauts informed mission control, who then ordered absolute silence. Chaplin also said, "I think that Walter Schirra aboard Mercury 8 was the first of the astronauts to use the code name Santa Claus to indicate the presence of flying saucers in his capsule." However, his account was rarely noticed because they published. It was different when James Hubble on board
Hey, this is done.
Hey. From behind the moon and said, "For everybody to hear, please be informed that there is a Santa Claus." Even though this happened on Christmas Day of 1968, many people sensed a hidden meaning to those words. The rumors persist to this day. NASA may well be a civilian agency. Many of its programs are funded by the defense budget, and most of the astronauts are subject to military security regulations. Apart from the fact that the USA screens all phones and radio communications as well, the astronauts were under strict orders not to discuss their science. According to John Podesta, former chief of staff for Bill Clinton and counselor to Barack Obama, the truth about the moon is being kept hidden from the public. He stated, "I'm skeptical about many things, including the notion that government always knows best and that the people can't be trusted with the truth." The time to pull the curtain back on the alien presence on the moon subject is long. We have statements from the most credible sources, those in a position to know about a fascinating phenomenon, the nature of which is yet to be determined. Dr. John Brandenburg is the principal inventor photo reconnaissance mission, basically to check out if someone was building bases on the moon that we didn't know about. Were they expanding them? It was during the Clementine mapping of the lunar surface that Brandenburg began to suspect an extraterrestrial presence on the moon. He said, as somebody in the space defense community, I look on any such structure on the moon with great concern because it isn't ours, and there's no way we could build such a thing. It means someone else is up there. Brandenburg is also quoted for saying, we were aware there was a possibility of an unknown presence, possibly alien extraterrestrial here. There I am sitting in a room of retired Army and Air Force generals and a few admirals, and we're watching what looks like a firefight in space. The most senior general there turned to me and said, where do you think they're from? And I said, I don't know, sir. I've heard that they're from 40 light years from here. Intelligent beings from other star systems have been and are visiting our planet Earth. They are variously referred to as visitors, others, star people, ETs, etc. They are visiting Earth now. This is not a matter of conjecture or wistful thinking. Is it possible that every time we look up at the moon, we are peering into our own past? We are seeing the vessel that traversed the vast emptiness of space and brought all mankind to Earth. Is the moon a spaceship? Could aliens reside in it now? Or is it an ancient starship with secrets of our past, and even we humans ourselves? Or could it be an observation platform, scrutinizing human endeavors as we grow and become a spacefaring race as well? Until we begin to take these curiosities about the moon seriously, we may never know who parked the starship in orbit around Earth. The next time you look up at the moon, ask yourself, why?
What is the Pentagon's black budget being used for? Weapons, defense. This is the story of one military family's extraordinary claims that couldn't come true in a hidden reality. I'm Phil Schneider. I spent 17 years in black budget programs, government geologist, as engineer, structural engineer, with aerospace applications, self-taught metallurgist. In working with the black projects, I was involved in something very controversial, almost totally unbelievable to most of you. I was involved in building another base inside of Gulf Bay, New Mexico, which is Los Alamos Laboratory. On the southwest part of the Archipelago Mesa, we were in the process of the early stages of building. We drilled 4 large tunnel-like holes, that some of them ran 2.5 miles under the surface. Anyway, we drilled all 4 holes. We found it 2 days to drill all 4 of them. And when you build an underground base, drill 4 basic holes, and you build stope surface, member holes across, and you use blasting equipment, and you literally blast out or tunnel out, or you flagellate or melt rock out. The equipment kept coming up broken. So we wanted to go down. We wanted to send somebody down there, a human observer, or human observers in this case, to find out what was going on. When I saw green beret and black beret people in camp, inside of our geologist camp, I knew something was up. It was up. In this process, I was lowered down the basket of one of these holes, and from me to this elderly woman here in the front was sitting a 7-foot tall alien gray. The stench was worse than the worst garbage can you can imagine. I didn't waste any time to reach around this floor. That time as an engineer, I didn't have time to carry all the folder, all of one of these big submachine guns that all the sea spray and the yellow fruit and the outer perimeter and inner perimeter security people carried. I carried a whole Walter PPK pistol with a 9-shot clip. But you're in almost like a spacesuit environment, and you're reaching for a gun. It's not the easiest thing to do, and then to pop a clip in it and start shooting. And I killed 2 of them. Yes, they're mortal, and they do die. However, in the process, one of them did this. All I remember is that he just kind of waved his hand in front of his chest, and the next thing I know, this blue beam hit me and just literally opened me up like a fish. It was some form of electrical force, because the kind of like being hit by a lightning bolt burned all my toenails off of me, and there was a green beret that was right behind me, but he risked his life to shove me back in the dash and hit the button and took me up. And I wouldn't be alive talking to you today. Worked for him. Come forever and death. He lost his life. 66 Secret Service agents green beret, black berets, black troops lost their lives because the government, our United States government, lied, did not tell us anything about the alien threat. There's a war underneath there, and I'm talking dead serious. The large alien graves had been encamped there for as best as believed possible about 400 or 500 years in one of their internal bases. And we drilled holes right on top of it. All the stinking air, all the black sooty air came right out as soon as one of the bird hole was up, and all the soot came up. Well, that's when all the hell broke loose, really, all started. I have a picture of one of the aliens been working for the United States Pentagon for the last 58 years. His name is Valiant 4. He's right here. There's my father in the background. This whole place, the ready room of the USS Eldridge, Albielico, has probably explained, or maybe even shown you this picture. There's a list of some of the notable people in it. They're all the atomic bomb scientists of the day, all the time variant experimentalists of the day, all the top physicists of that particular day. This was in August of 1943. Phil Schneider gave most of his lectures in 1995. He gave the following speaking around the United States, telling people about his alleged experiences. Phil claimed that he personally knew people who also worked in black budget programs who were murdered, and that most of them were made to look like a suicide. 11 of my best friends in the last 22 years have been murdered. 8 of them called suicide. I finally got wind of one of them. Portland police is now involved in one murder by suicide. On August 6, 1993, 2 years before his lectures, one of Phil's best friends, Ron Rummel, was found dead in San Maclay Park, Oregon. He had suffered a fatal gunshot wound to the head, and a gun was found nearby. Police ruled it as suicide, but Phil and many others strongly believed that he was murdered. Ron Rummel was best known
This one's
for
done.
publishing the Alien Digest, a newsletter filled with stories and testimonies regarding the UFO cover-up.
Author Ron Rummel was about to publish a book revealing what he believed to be the real purpose of the Star Wars project when his body was found here in the Clay Park in Portland, Oregon. His death was full suicide, but few agree with that verdict.
As far as the FBI I'm concerned, it's case closed. Unfortunately, there's the shocking thing that his murderer, I believe his murderer is still out there at large.
Why is it you're speaking out?
There have been enough lives taken under the premise of suicide when there were actually very stable individuals they had families and they had lives to look forward to, and they had every reason to live. And if there is some form of conspiracy out there, then the more people that are talking might end up saving lives in the long run. My friend Ronald Lee Rummel is an Air Force officer at the Silver Star winner. There's a good chance that when I fly back to Vegas, I have to drive home. I left my car down in Vegas, I'll drive home alone, I'm scared to hell. On January 17th, 1996, after not being seen for at least 5 days, Phil Schneider was found dead in his apartment by his landlord and a detective from the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. The autopsy report listed the cause of death as unknown, but it was later discovered that Phil was actually strangled by his own catheter hose. Was this a case of negligence or a cover-up? There's a number of you ladies present, so I won't bore you out, but Al has seen some of the ones, and there's a few other people that have been at a few of my other lectures, and they can attest that I have been shot. I've been run off the road, I've been pushed off the road.
This is an account of Phil's death, a case that reeks of suspicion, neglect of duty, and disregard for human dignity. The first official police report defines Phil's cause of death to be from natural causes. On January 16, 1996, Deputy Officer McClellan is alerted by a suspicious apartment manager that he has not seen Phil for weeks. Upon first investigation, when entering Phil's apartment, Officer McClellan finds Phil's body beside his bed with his face lying in the seat of his own wheelchair. Medical and forensic examiner Mr. Coleman chooses not to respond to the crime scene. At this point, Phil had been dead for 3 to 4 days. January 17th, his body is then whisked away to a funeral home. January 18th, Mr. Took calls from the funeral home to alert the police that he has found a catheter cord wrapped around Phil's neck. This leads to the starting of Detective Hagen's investigation on the same day. Hagen seems to be the only one interested in following up this case honestly. He calls medical examiner Coleman and Sergeant Joyce, who both elect not to respond. Upon further investigation, while interrogating Deputy McClellan, the deputy recalls the catheter cord being near Phil's neck at the scene of the crime. It is concluded in this report that the only person who could have been around Phil at this time was a woman from the Oregon Senior and Disabled Services. Other things recovered from the scene of the investigation were 7 pill medications. Detectives Harris and Kennel are then assigned to the case. An autopsy is to be held by Dr. Gunson on January 19th. This was requested as well by Phil's late wife. The autopsy report determines Phil caused death by asphyxiation, ruled a suicide. However, stomach exams showed no signs of pills. Furthermore, blood and urine are placed on a 3-month hold, only to be reported as lost when Cynthia calls after the given time has passed. The catheter cord is described as being wrapped around the neck once and then tied from the front very tight. Now, you must ask yourself, how can Phil be found dead by a strangulation with his face in the seat of his own wheelchair? Is this something that he could do himself without taking any form of medical assistance in order to sedate? What do we have here? Is this a clean-cut case of suicide? Or could there likely be could this be a case of murder by suicide? This case was determined on January 19th as death by suicide, which is further indicated on his death certificate. But something of even more suspicion appears in this case. In the Oregonian obituary, a statement is given, not by Cynthia, that he died from a stroke.
So, what happened here?
Turned in some samples. They were suddenly missing.
What did they say? They were just as surprised as you were?
Oh, you have here. Welcome back in a few months. It was our day. Or, you know, it was 1 month until the was not holding anymore. And we'll see what happened.
So let's get back down to if you're dealing with something that's a magnet, whether you're there's a variety of non-human here on Earth that have some sort of setup and everything else, including possible coordination, incredibly explosive material. And so it goes without saying that the intelligence is lacking. And the whole thing is really and blind we have for the road reservation. So in other words, it becomes the ultimate goal for the secrecy in theory, but if there are leaks that are going to come out, you have to find a way to stay with it. Either by saving the information or the individual behind it, doesn't have to be by killing them. Could be by ruining their reputation, by discrediting them in one way or another. That's just
Come on, cat, you stupid fuck. I swear to God, Kat. Ain't nothing for you. Get down, dumbass. Get down. Get.
Long story short, it was Martha telling me that he sent for an experiment. Made it seem to suicide. Because he needs some security. This is her own game. So that flower here, most people learning that there's possible human alien interaction going on. This is a secret that
Animals.
anyone who's
Man.
recognized has gone in hand. Whether by discrediting a person or getting all
Upon examination, it seems easy to accept the theory that Phil was a victim of homicide. But what does that mean for his claims of aliens living underground? Years after Schneider's death, other claims of a joint human-alien base underneath Dulce, New Mexico are surfacing left and right. The book UFO Highway by Anthony Sanchez is essentially transcripts of interviews with a person only known as Colonel X, who supposedly worked inside this facility and is known to believe that Phil Schneider was really there. Shows like History Channel's UFO Hunters have even visited the area looking for clues. It's a 14-mile underground tunnel that goes under that mountain. Even Jesse Ventura's conspiracy theory on True TV paid a visit to the alleged location of the Dulce base. They had it pretty well. Some other pretty credible sources for alien activity in the Archuleta Mesa include the high number of Apache Native Americans who have some pretty insane stories of strange happenings in the area.
Rumor has it there is a secret base hidden underneath the Archuleta Mesa here. The mountain overlooks Dulce. Some people in town say the base is run by aliens working with our federal government to conduct mind control and genetic experiments. Do you believe that? Yeah? Well, I hope I said you with you,
Well, I'm hoping no. Steam coming out of it.
Jerry Julian says she had her first extraterrestrial encounter right here on her Dulce Ranch about 40 years ago. It was cute. I just saw the bottom of it. Many of her neighbors claim similar strange sightings.
Flat in the middle and kind of like rounded on the side. You're speechless, you know? You just don't know what to think.
Sometime in the 70s, things changed. That's when cows started turning up mutilated. They got cut up. You might think that they right here we've seen one.
But I know it's not a predator, it's only if there's someone's doing it.
Local police never definitively said who's to blame. Locals say
No.
it has to be something out of this world. They say they know. It sounds
No.
Submit to a live
Cat.
To be fair, at this point we have to also play devil's advocate with Phil Schneider's extraordinary claims. It is entirely possible that he simply heard about the tales of UFOs and underground bases in the Archuleta Mesa area and made up his own story based on those stories. In order to at least make an attempt at finding out if he was telling the truth or not, we must first know who Phil Schneider was.
I kind of knew about Philip. I had met him through the Oregon Packet and Mineral Society in Portland, Oregon. And I had been a past president of the society, had about 500 members. So, it's a large group of people who came together at the end of the week to study rock minerals.
What year was this?
1985. Philip grew up in a Navy Armed Force family since he was all over places with his dad. So let's see, while he was young, I think they also went to London. It was in the early 50s.
No. Cat.
So he was in London, and I think that's when Oscar was working
No.
at NATO. He was doing a lot of Armed Force work at NATO. But he kind of knew that his dad was doing a lot of top secret things later on in
like to also mention something about my father. My father was a U-boat captain in Hitler's Navy. He was captured by the French, turned over to the Third Army, the U.S. Third Army, and then U.S. Third Army turned him over to the Navy. And he was a master machinist. Now, that's not a journeyman. A master means they can take a block of metal, make a gun or a watch or some other fine instrument. He was a master machinist. He later became an MD doctor, part of the aerospace medicine group of the United States Navy. Was instrumental in helping build the USS Nautilus and its predecessor, the Enterprise, the first nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, and other ships like it.
Phil's father, Oscar Otto Schneider, was also
No.
in government secrecy
Cat.
projects. In the 1990s, during Phil Schneider's lecture tour across the United States, he was known to carry many documents and pictures, providing evidence to certain testimony about controversial subjects he would be discussing. Furthermore, there were 4 documents which Phil carried with him on lecture tour. These documents were allegedly owned by Oscar Schneider while he was in office working for the United States Navy in the 1950s. During this time, the rumored Philadelphia experiment took place. And perhaps these documents are the smoking gun that proved, in fact, the Philadelphia experiment did occur. The first document details an autopsy report on one of the crew members from the Philadelphia experiment.
One of the letters that Oscar wrote about the autopsy of the Philadelphia experiment crew members, items that he was pulling out of their back of their eyes, their arms, their legs, little things that looked like cancer. Exactly what they were. They were little surveillance items that were placed into the body of the Philadelphia experiment crew members.
In this letter, it is addressed to Lieutenant Nathan F. Twining. Oscar seems to report on the vessel, which Twining's staff couldn't find. Furthermore, it includes an order from J. Edgar Hoover to have all personnel undergo psychological testing. The third letter addresses Edward Condon. Edward Condon is well known for his involvement explaining away all UFO phenomena as simply optical illusions. However, in this letter, Oscar seems to be reporting to Edward that 7 Philadelphia Project experiencers had escaped from a psych ward that Oscar was holding and testing them at. He goes on to say that J. Edgar had declared the incident classified as a 1A crime directive, possibly meaning something in regards to a top secret security clearance. Finishing this letter with a reference to Nikola Tesla's spatial analyzer. This is significant because Nikola Tesla has always been known to be involved with the design of the machine, which would create the fabled Philadelphia experiment's invisible technology. Condon, having been known most notoriously as the leading UFO debunker of his time, paved the way for secrecy and cover-ups in this realm that we study today. The fourth and final letter, Oscar Schneider writes again, in consideration of the latent facts, considering the fate of the USS Fahrenheit DE-173, all ships, personnel, and material must be quarantined absolute until further notice. No exceptions. An on-site naval inspection is ordered forthwith, as Bureau of Ships reticent requirements in Section 93A. Please include DE-173's ship's log to Admiral Roscoe Hillenkohl, USN. Consider them and all events of nature above secret. C-Class ARH-9, Project Blue Sky. Oscar Schneider, Captain, USN.
At this point, it appears that Phil Schneider's father, Oscar, was very likely involved in classified operations that involved top secret technologies. But what about his son, Phil? What do we really know about his work?
I would say late 60s, he started his work, and I have social security records under a wrong social security number, and this is how the black ops get away with a lot of things. They put you under the wrong social security number if you can't prove your work history, instead. But I can prove that under the wrong social security number, he worked for Houston, which is a contractor, a civilian contractor that works for the RCC. He did some work in Trojan Nuclear after that, but early 1980s, he was applying for astronaut. So I know by the early 1980s, his career is done. He's so injured that he cannot do his work and his memory is like totally lost from before. It was until after he got married and he got his medical care and he stopped taking the medication to the patient when I first met him. And he started to remember all of the things that are now on the internet.
Don't just play games. Make them. Whether it's designing a new video game, boosting their math skills, or coding with a robot, ID Tech helps kids pursue their passions and tech. Give your child an online learning experience they'll actually enjoy. Get started at idtech.com/TV.
Hello, Marie. Lots of food, soft drinks.
Tell me when did Bill start telling you about his past and his work?
It was soon after he kept saying that he had to take Dilantin to prevent seizures. But I noticed when he took Dilantin, he would have a seizure. It was the other way around. It was actually killing him. And it was disrupting him emotionally, physically, so much that he didn't have much of memory of anything in his past. And then after we were married, he got really good medical care. It slowly started to stop. I mean, it was like, he would even say to me, "I hope you don't think I'm lying to you, remembering this, but wow, these things are coming up and I just suddenly remember what's really happened." But that's really where it started. When Oscar died, it might have been 94, Philip was down into his basement, found a file cabinet full of stuff that was just unbelievable. And he showed me both of them. See, I saw the original envelope.
Pat, what are you doing? Nosy ass.
That had drawings on it. I saw the original photograph with the stamps on the back from the Navy. I mean, it was all real stuff. This is not fake. He shared so much. You know, we were divorced at the time. So I
Quit,
saw
Kat.
all this stuff that came out of the brown hip. But he's been talking to Ron about it a lot. They were doing a little magazine, a little digest. And then his dad died and he found all this stuff in the basement. Well, Ron was murdered that same day. And that infuriated me. As Philip grew up, he went to Richmond High School here in Portland. Because I have a transcript of his senior high school. So that was pretty normal, except it does indicate on that transcript that he had an IQ of 163.
Quit. Go.
Philip told me that before he had his medical issue, he could speak 11 languages. And I believe that because he would suddenly, in the middle of the night, sit together and suddenly start rattling off different languages. So this is all though in his sleep, consciously couldn't remember how to speak those languages, but in his sleep, unconsciously, it's still connected.
Get. Get.
This is actually very idea in human history. Going back and thousands of years.
I'm nosy ass fuck. Pat. You go away.
We would say it's in their midst, but that there are secret patterns, secret races, secret tribes that exist under the ground. And really, when we talk about, for example, how on earth here is, that's a
potential caverns underground where there are civilizations that are dormant. So that's an old idea. In a lot of ancient European, I think like the Germans have a tradition, Native Americans have a tradition, the Tibetans, they have the most extensive tradition of this for all I know. South America, traditional tribes have this as well. So the idea from the Tibet, from what I have understood of it, is that there are different races below the surface of the earth, including reptile or reptilian races that are supposedly from other worlds. I'm making this up. So that by itself is interesting. And you might ask, why do all of these historic civilizations have these kinds of ideas? And I don't have the answer to that. But I can tell that's an old idea.
Dolan goes on to explain the supposed connection between the Nazis and Tibetan Hollow Earth theories.
So when you really get it in place in where the Nazis and their predecessors, which was called the Dual Society, which was a kind of a mystical sect that the Nazis really drew a lot out of in forming their own ideology. The Dual Society was very interested in Tibetanness, about openings into the earth. This idea of underground tunnels, bases, crisscrossing the world. Because this was a Tibetan idea. We have to assume that the Nazis themselves were familiar with this idea as well.
There's no question that the secret underground bases do exist. And by the way, it's not only the military of the United States or other countries, who are making these underground and also undersea facilities. Other agencies and organizations do it as well. All that is needed is the requisite will, funding, expert personnel, and technology. In the early to mid 20th century, you had the French, of course, who constructed the so-called Maginot Line in eastern France to go against German invasion in World War II. There was a military civil engineering organization in the Third Reich called the Todt organization. And it was named after Fritz Todt. Fritz Todt was a brilliant civil engineer. He was the father of the German Autobahn system. During the World War II period, Adolf Hitler asked Fritz Todt to lend his engineering expertise to the military program of the Third Reich, which he did. He established an engineering agency, which is called the Todt organization. Now, this Todt died in a plane crash in 1942, and one of the deputies named Salvador Dorsch took over control of the agency. I did find a couple of paperclip memos from 1947 that specifically requested Salvador Dorsch by name to be brought to the United States to work on the United States military's underground plant construction program. The American military certainly was well aware of who Salvador Dorsch was and his expertise. In his day, he was probably the preeminent authority on underground base construction, whether in Germany or in the United States.
Ruins have been uncovered in Argentina, but they're not from an ancient civilization. They're reportedly connected with the Nazi regime. According to an article in the New Zealand Herald, a secret bunker was found, which appears to have been planned for members of the Nazi Party to use as a hideout after losing the war and fleeing to South America.
But I've had people tell me that some of the bases are as deep as 10, 12, 14 miles down.
So if they're 1 mile deep, how would they make that? Like, can you think possibly technology that you came across in documents or research?
Oh yes, since at least the 1950s, the mining and civil engineering industry have had the capability to sink major shafts straight down 1, even 2 miles or more, and then to tunnel out from the bottom of the shafts, whether for mining purposes or for entry tunnel complexes. And one of the most common forms is to use flying machines that rotate would be like a huge version of the drills used in the petroleum industry and natural gas industry to drill very deep underground boreholes.
I've heard theories also nuclear power drills.
Yes, I cited this technology in my first book. These are called subterranes. Subterranes are nuclear power. They use a small fission nuclear reactor. The nuclear reactor staying within a machine. The research and design was done at Los Alamos National Laboratory back in the 20th century. And there were some patents granted to the research team at Los Alamos. If they are in use, they are being used clandestinely in great secrecy.
You also maybe lend to the audience some examples of real underground facilities.
The most famous one would be under Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, which used to be the flag. It's not always a backup.
Bird seeds for the bird. Now wait till it dries, then hang it outside. So I'm gonna get you some rope for the animals. So I can wait till it dries. I hate animals sometimes. I fucking get in the way all the time. Get back.
Yes, sir. Go back to the so-called Area 51.
Nothing up there for you.
In people's minds, you say I can't talk about it because it's classified. Hundreds of there is. There's the cover-up. Can you give us any hint, without violating any sense of the confidential nature, what kinds of things might be happening?
Sure, I cannot. Forgive me. I just do not know.
Anyone in the Air Force that can.
I'm going to have to defer that to public affairs. It's outside of my area of expertise. And I have no reason to believe that they're real.
And then there are other ones that are perhaps less well known. The NSA in Willow Mountain, which is at Fort Meade. Fort Meade is a farm facility, but the NSA is actually a major activity there. And there is little acres, multiple acres of supercomputers beneath Fort Meade. They go down and down and down. I've been told 20 levels, maybe more. And then Los Alamos National Lab in northern New Mexico. Then you have Camp David in Maryland. Many people are familiar with Camp David as the United States presidential retreat where presidents often helicopter to for rest relaxation. But what's commonly known is that there is a massive underground facility that spreads out for miles. And the one up to the first one that's around, that's built for 3D deep buried, sophisticated underground facilities in Saudi Arabia. They were used during the war, the first war. Governor Norman Schwarzkopf, who was the American military commander, spent most of that war underground in Saudi Arabia. And the Chinese, it has come to light that the Chinese have constructed something like 3,000 miles of underground tunnels to house their nuclear arsenal.
What's the benefit of building all of these bases in and around the world? What is it for? Is it for keeping things secret? And what are they keeping secret? Is it for keeping things away from the public? Is it also for protection in some way? Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, to all of that. All of those are considerations. The motivation for going deep underground and or deep undersea is often driven by concerns of security and secrecy. Weapons, production, and storage happens underground, whether for nuclear weapons or other kinds. This has been going on ever since the World War II period.
It looks almost like a scene from an action movie. Dozens of ballistic missile launching systems inside a gigantic cave.
Still
What the
have
video
this one.
shows, Iran's missile program is very real and very big, as the head of the Elite Revolutionary Guard's Aerospace Division said. The missiles in various ranges are mounted on launchers in all bases and are ready to be launched before the Iranian state
widely known and discussed. Other underground research facilities, including the Area 51 elsewhere, that operate much more out of the public eye. There are many rumors about clandestine extraterrestrial facilities, both underground and undersea, and a growing number of people have come forward over the years with anecdotal accounts of having seen and or been taken into such facilities by a variety of reasons, both by extraterrestrials and also by shadow elements of the United States military, like clandestine units. I do take these stories seriously. I do believe that these types of facilities exist. One of the main reasons that they would be here underground, again, for secrecy, for security, and for purposes of communication, command, and control. The same reasons that the United States military goes underground.
Secrecy, how corporations use HR software? Nope. We use 11. 11. Why do an expense report from your phone when you can do it from the machine that jams?
I just emailed my wife's social security number to the entire company instead of HL Contract. So please come back.
How hard is your business software working for you? With Paycom, employees enter and manage their own HR data in one easy-to-use software. This is
Cat, you are one nosy
free
animal.
demo.
Hi. First off, we love each other.
Visions and
Who else?
underworld.
I spent years going through each of technical documentation, military medical complex, and Marshall Peterson is one of those that would pop up and do the opportunities. Companies like Parsons, Douglas, Hewitt, Black, of course, you have two military agencies, the Army Corps of Engineers, which is definitely involved in constructing underground bases and tunnels. It has been for more than half a century. You also have U.S. Navy who also work in underground and undersea construction. Those would be the lead military agencies, but there are large corporations that are involved. The Bechtel Corporation is one. Then you have the Tom Warren Machine companies such as the Robbins Company. A number of these companies, which for decades have worked very closely with not only the United States military agencies, but also other agencies in construction of facilities and tunnels. These are massive undertakings. And to do that, you need to have large organizations with a bureaucratic administrative structure that's capable of supporting projects like this. You won't easily find this stuff on the internet. I found documents by going through federal document repositories at major university libraries in the United States and also two federal agency document repositories. With these corporations, it's like a shell game, and it's harder and harder to find out who is working for whom and what they're doing and under what conditions. The so-called Marshall Peterson is now owned by something called URS as of 2007. So you see, it makes it hard to follow what they're doing and to follow the money and the contract because the names in the corporate alliances are constantly changing as they flux at a very high level.
Now, these mega bases are gobbling up our gross national product. Right now, we're spending 28% of the gross national product on building underground bases solely. That doesn't count for the defense budget. That doesn't count for the spare parts budget. And the black budget is dead wrong. It sidesteps the United States Congress and its Constitution of its people and says you're a bunch of morons you don't need to know. Now, all this alien thing is fine, except for one thing. Alien takeover is a serious threat. Kept totally out of the public view, off the surface, I'm sure the underground bases, without question, are being used as a place to house alien takeover. Alien takeover means the implementation of a one world government. Direct opposite of constitutional law. Direct opposite of freedom of choice, freedom of religion, other freedoms that go with it. Right to bear arms. If allow another election to go by with the same ilk in the White House, we have only ourselves to blame.
One question that arises is whether or not there is a legendary, much talked about deal between and not the human alien deal. All I can say at this point is that anything is possible. I do believe that there are a number of other beings that are here. So it's then possible, it's then possible that such a deal left alone. For example, what would the deal include? It could have included we humans getting certain technologies and knowledge from them in exchange for them having the ability to do certain things in our society without us giving them access to it. For them having a permanent base somewhere, maybe in the past. For them every now and then taking a human being to examine and return. This is the claim of the human alien deal. And the claim furthermore is that we learned during the 70s and 80s that they were not abiding by their agreement. That they were taking humans, not telling us, not telling us in government and so forth. None of this, I have any idea if this is true. There's no idea. What I would say is that it would very much be in the interest of a visiting race to make a deal with the U.S. government. Why not? Sure, they might be able to work it out if they felt like it, but maybe that's too much of a hassle for them. Maybe it's just a lot easier to deal with a local governing power. And so it would make sense to make an arrangement with the local strongman, which would be the U.S. military and the U.S. government. And if you really want to get, subterranean here, so to speak, there would be a lot of benefits from a visiting race of extraterrestrials to exploit Earth and do that to that. So a lot of folks in this field believe that any visiting human race would by their nature be peaceful, non-violent. I never believe in this. I don't understand at all why just because you have better technology, then that means you're nicer. You could be just as exploitative in the human industry. We've got great technology these days. It doesn't mean we're any less exploitative than people who find our money in it. Well, look, if you come from someplace that's not here, really makes sense, doesn't it? To create a secure environment for yourself, probably under the ground. Best place to be. All the features of planet Earth are suitable for human beings. They may not be as suitable for some other type of species that didn't come from me. When I go through the various witness reports, alleged reports of encounters that people have had with these other entities, that also reinforces my opinion that we're dealing with multiple groups. So at this point, my working assumption is that humanity right now is interacting really on a covert basis with multiple highly intelligent, non-human groups that are here. And they're here for purposes that might very well be quite varied. It's not necessarily the case that they all have one agenda. Now, some of these groups, some of these entities, according to, again, witness accounts, are like the prototypical grays, that is short, humanoid, large black eyes. Another type of technology that's been discussed are reptoid types, that is large, kind of intimidating reptilian creatures. Yet another type that's been reported are what we might call manatid or insectoid type creatures. All of this is bizarre, but yet these reports are consistent across many, many years of native and tribal people, some who are utterly ignorant of the lore or the literature, and they still report, ordinary people. So that gives me pause. That makes me really wonder if these reports are consistent with some of the more ancient myths that people have reported back in earlier times.
For the murder was the fact that Cynthia went to a few psychics and asked them, well, she didn't ask them, but, she was looking to find out anything about that murder. And I think she went to like 3 or 4 different psychics, and they told her that he was killed by several people. One was a woman, and there were like 2 to 4 men involved.
I'm going to go ahead and say I think that's all we know. There's documents, and they're in the documentary. There's more documents that he toured with tons, pictures of UFOs flying away from Bikini Atoll. When the military was testing the first nuclear bombs out there, his father was involved in all this stuff. And when his father died, right around the time that he started going on lecture tour, Bill picked up a lot of these documents from his father's basement office. And Cynthia Schneider even told me this, Cynthia Baird. And basically, that's one of the sort of smoking guns to the whole phenomenon, is that there was somebody that wouldn't come out and talk about this subject themselves, which was Oscar Schneider, but his son would.
And then you had guys like this that were building, you look at the Tea Party, the political party that really it was born out of a grassroots movement. And you look at the way that these people, they saw stuff happening in the American public sort of political forum, and they were sick and tired of it, and they formed the Tea Party as a group, and they became really powerful, and now they have seats in Congress and everything. But I guess what I'm trying to say is Phil Schneider and William Cooper were both forming these sort of grassroots movements, these large groups of people that were listening to them all over the United States. And these were people that were not necessarily looking for the occult. They were sometimes just average Joes that were, tired of what they were being told by the government or by the mainstream media, and they wanted to find something fresh and find something that maybe connected better with what they may believe to be true, what was really going on around the world. And I think that's the real threat. And back then it was a real threat to powers that be, because you had a pretty stable system of disinformation, infiltrating the minds of the people and keeping the paradigm nice and stable. But then you had people like Phil Schneider and William Cooper going on tour around the U.S. and just saying, this is bullshit. You're all living a lie. Wake up.
This world we live in is not simple, and there's all kinds of stuff out there that don't have simple explanations. And this story really attracted me. It really attracted me. We've been good friends ever since we got attracted to the story. I think the reason why Darcy and I really gravitated towards Phil is because, for two reasons. One, it's probably the most bold claim related to the UFO phenomenon I've ever heard. The fact that there's aliens underground, and the fact that this guy was not only encountered them, but was in a battle with them, and they, wounded him in this fight that broke out. That is probably the boldest claim I've ever seen related to the UFO phenomenon. So that's a reason why I think we became obsessed with this guy. And also, he's kind of debunked. There's a lot of people on YouTube and on the internet that really kind of believe him. And I thought that was also interesting, because it was kind of like this thing where maybe people will know he was telling the truth. But it's interesting because, he was a higher math genius. I think he had like an IQ of 140 in high school. Darcy, was that accurate?
Yeah,
it was very, very high. 62, 160, yeah, high IQ. This wasn't just some guy.
Come on, cat.
Told the story. He was a guy with a really rich background, really interesting history. He worked on we have documents in the documentary of his work history, and you can see that he worked for Morrison Knudsen and definitely was working for the big military contractors. So he's he's not just some guy like a Bob Lazar who, has no credentials and has this, which by the way, I'm not knocking Bob Lazar. Like that. I love Bob too.
Okay.
Phil is a guy where we can actually prove his work history.
Yeah.
So that adds some credibility that is kind of rare with these type of people.
Deep underground military bases, extraterrestrials living beneath Earth's surface, a race that might not even be from another planet, but rather one that has existed here in the shadows throughout mankind's entire development. Is this the biggest cover-up in our history, or just another conspiracy theory? In 2017, we still have no definitive proof that any of these claims occurred, which is all the more reason why this just might be one of the greatest journalistic responsibilities of our time.
And I'm not asking you to believe me in total. I am asking you to seriously do enough homework that you can go out and through the public record, through the congressional records, find out who's voting for what, and go from there. Do your own program, do your own agenda, and do your own speaking out. And if enough of us do this, there is some saving grace.
Aliens have been around since the dawn of time. Mankind has given them many names: angels, ghosts, demons, and more. We look to the skies and wonder, but the truth about aliens visiting planet Earth is much more profound. It is so startling and so strange that no one has thought to look in that particular direction. Our ancestors developed ways of contacting these aliens, and they called them gods. They were beings of light, shining ones, watchers. They were both good and bad, mirroring humanity. They gave great knowledge, and after tens of thousands of years, mankind suddenly had the ability to create civilization. We built huge monuments in their name, and we recorded our contact with them in fables, myths, legends, folklore, and religion.
They were our gods, and we worshiped them and recorded their powers, deeds, and lives. These gods of the world were in fact not real gods, whatever that means. They were in fact alien invaders, and we were the subjects of their rule. This is the true story of the aliens in the ancient world. Before we look at sightings and archaeological evidence, we must understand what it is we're looking for. Thankfully, our ancestors left behind a trail of clues that we have taken the wrong way. The beliefs and worship of ancient gods around the world has spawned our view. Over 5,000 years before Christ, an amazing thing happened that would change the course of human history. Hidden from us by misunderstanding, mistranslation, and clouded in mythology, the birth of religion on this planet was no mere accident. It was the result of an alien invasion on a vast scale, and it sparked the worship of the ancient aliens as gods. These gods are the oldest recorded figures of worship anywhere in history. They are the root of all major world religions. They gave rise to the great powers of Egypt, Mesopotamia, and more. They spread outwards around the world and were the genesis of a special holy bloodline that remains with us today. One of their descendants would be caught, beaten, and crucified, and yet he would rise from his grave, unrecognizable, and accompanied by messengers of light. He would ascend in the sky, having cast off his shrouded skin. His bloodline would give rise to the royal families of the entire world. His bloodline would be protected, defended, and would control the globe. He was a descendant of the great serpent elite who came to earth as beings of light to create, control, and teach mankind. He was a descendant of the great giant killer, David, a memory of the great battle that was fought between the serpent elite and the sons of alien and man. All of this is actually written in the historical records. They were known as giants in the land. The aliens escaped Earth, but left behind their seed and tools of power and communication. It is prophesied that they shall return, and the signs are growing daily that they have returned and are right now dealing with their own elite bloodline, the men in power. Original worship on this planet is that of the serpent. That is a historical fact, and yet it is within every single religion. It is in all the myths of the world, and they all tell the same story. In the beginning, the serpent was the wise one, the only animal in the Bible to speak freely with his own mind and voice, the tempter, and yet also the holder of ultimate wisdom and the elixir of life. Mankind, in comparison to this remarkable animal, appeared foolish. From that day forward, the serpent would control man. That serpent was a reptilian alien holding the technological power to seize humanity and the wisdom of another civilization. The very genetic makeup of mankind altered from this moment. We cannot say exactly when. We cannot pinpoint the so-called Garden of Eden in time. But we can piece together the remarkable story of the moment the serpent aliens came from the skies. We can uncover the story of what happened next and how it has affected our own time. The truth is, descendants of aliens do walk among us right now. To many, the very idea that the serpent is hidden within our religious and mythology will seem bizarre. In Christianity and other faiths, it is reviled, and this itself is a folk memory of a fearful and warring past between mankind and the serpent aliens. Nevertheless, the historical truth is that the serpent is there, and it is the root of all major religions. This has been proven again and again, both from scriptures and archaeology. Baal was an abbreviation for Ab-El, the serpent god or shining serpent. The shining aspect of the serpent reveals a subtle clue. The serpent was indeed seen in the sky and shone down upon us. This is why in Egypt, for instance, we will see the sun or atom wrapped with a snake, and why the serpent was worldwide seen as a symbol of the sun. It was these shining ones, or serpents, which were the lights in the sky that descended to earth. They were lights that our ancestors saw in the sky, the sun, moon, and stars, but these lights came down to earth and settled amongst us. The lights were the ships, the craft of the strange serpent-like humanoids that stepped off and walked among mankind. The Greeks called Baal Bel-Air, which means a dragon or great serpent. Baal is the Assyro-Babylonian version of the gods Enlil and Marduk, the same Baal seen throughout the Bible. So the Baal in the Bible is a Babylonian serpent god, one of the ancient lights of wisdom that descended to earth. These tales are global. The European Beltane should be rendered Baal Tan, both words signifying the dragon or The general term used for early Christian Gnostics was Orphites, which means serpent worshippers. It was this group that wrote the New Testament. Epiphanius said the Orphites sprung out of the Nicolaitans and Gnostics and were so called from the serpent which they worshipped. They taught that the ruler of this world was of a draconic form, and the Orphites attribute all wisdom to the serpent of paradise and say that he was the author of the knowledge of men. An amazing declaration.
Okay, this is them.
The guardians of the very history and religion that would become Christianity was in fact based on and fostered by those who worshipped the ancient wise alien serpent that came and taught mankind.
Oh shit.
The ruler of this world was of draconic form. It was the dragon, the winged serpent, the shining serpent that could fly. It was ultimately wise and should be worshipped as a god. A 3rd century Persian teacher known as Mani, who said that Christianity had got things wrong and he was here to put it right, attempted to revive these old ways. Regardless of the Christian attempts to kill off Manichaeism, it survived until the 13th century. He is said to have revived Ophiloetria, or serpent worship, where he taught that Christ was an incarnation of the great serpent who glided over the cradle of the Virgin Mary when she was asleep at the age of 1.5 years. This is a folk memory of their powers of genetic manipulation. But
I don't think I'm gonna quit for it now.
much more ancient than even Mani's statement. In Britain, the serpent god was Hugh, the dragon ruler of the world. A statement remarkably similar to that of the